Thank you all for taking time out of your afternoons to join us for the next chapter in used book sales. My name is Janet Eaton, and I am the president of the Minnesota Association of Library Friends. MALF is hosting today's session. As it happens, this is our first webinar of the new year and our first ever focused on book sales. In a year defined by social distancing restrictions and other checks on our favorite fundraisers, friends have had to be even more creative than usual. And that's the purpose of our next hour. We are honored to showcase some case studies and hope that the ideas shared will, as they say, prime the pump for your own creative thinking. First, though, a little housekeeping. My MALF board colleague, Ann Hutton, will do the honors of introducing our 4 panelists in the order listed here. She will turn the reins over to each in turn for their presentations. Between each one, there will be a minute for audience Q&A, facilitated again by Ann. We ask that this time is used for presentation-specific questions. A few words regarding the questions. We have over 130 registrants for today's program, with folks hailing from across Minnesota, zooming in from Dilworth, Cook, Laverne, and Quezon, so we truly can say that today's program covers all 4 corners of our state. A couple of important points. First, please remember to use your mute button on your computer. Second, with a number this large, we ask that you simply type your questions in chat, and Ann will relay them to our guest panelists. Third, use the hand raise function only if you have a tech-related question or an issue. Our tech manager, David, will be mindful of raised hands, and he will be in touch with you individually. Once we've gone through all 4 presentations, Ann will lead a longer and more broad-based Q&A involving all 4 panelists. She'll begin this with a few questions curated by the MALF board. But here again, we welcome all your questions in chat. A recording of today's session will be shared with all registrants in an email later this week. I'll be back at the very end of the session with a few calendar updates about upcoming MALF grant and awards opportunities. But for now, I turn it over to you, Ann.
Good afternoon, everyone around Minnesota. For years, I worked as a regional library system director, and one of my great joys was the fact that I could travel around the state visiting libraries. And after retirement and joining the MALF board, the joy of working with people around the state continues. So as Janet has already mentioned, we have people from all over the state, and we also have a nice assortment of large libraries and small libraries. So everyone can maybe find something that you can tailor to your group and your institution. Our first presenter represents one of our smaller libraries in Minnesota, the Isanti Area Library. Susie McCune is with the Friends of the Isanti Area Library. This library friends group offers a funding bulwark for the satellite Isanti Outreach Library, which is part of the East Central Regional Library. Tucked modestly into a corner of the Isanti City Hall, the library cannot hold fundraisers in its own space. In 2019, the Friends teamed up with Junction Bowl to hold a gangbusters book sale in this spacious and novel, David wrote the pun, so forgive it, this novel setting. During the inaugural sale alone, this hardworking Friends group sold 1,700 items. Not bad in a town with only 5,200 people. So welcome, Susie. Tell us what you've been doing in Isanti.
Thank you. Well, this is very exciting. I'm going to go right to our slideshow. So let me share our screen. We appreciate being part of this panel. And the Friends of the Isanti Area Library, which is also known as FILE, is a nonprofit group that promotes the East Central Regional Library's Isanti outreach site. We recycle books back into the community and encourage reading, literacy, and learning for everyone. Yeah. If I can get it to... Okay. In 2013, we decided to offer a used book sale. And of course, since we're located in a small room at City Hall, we had to find a different venue for our sale. So our first two sales were held in a large room at a member's home, which proved to be inadequate, as well as not being handicap accessible. Fortunately, Mike Waring, who owns Junction Bowl in Isanti, offered to let us use his banquet room for our sale. This was perfect for our needs and also gave the bowling alley a lot of exposure. Many shoppers and volunteers eat at the bowling alley's restaurant, so we support Mike's business in that way too. Our first step was to choose a date. Past sales had been held in February for I Love to Read month, but the weather in 2019 was extremely frigid, which had created many challenges, including making it difficult to post the street signs announcing the sale location. After reviewing our options and recalling our past experiences, we moved our sale to October during National Friends of Libraries Week. We constructed A-frame signs that didn't need to be pushed into the ground as well, much faster and easier to display. The main steps needed for our sale are collecting books, planning volunteers, marketing, setting up the venue, and disposing of leftovers. Requesting donations is a year-round task that has had amazing results. Books and other items are brought to my garage to await sorting. We accept most donations, and if we find they are not saleable, then we either recycle them or trash them.
Hi, Gail. And Gail is doing the first step of our sorting process and putting books into boxes by genre. So once people bring their donated books, we sort them here. And then when one of these genre boxes gets full, then we move them to the shelves on the other side of the garage where they wait to be moved to Junction Bowl for the sale.
Volunteers sort books throughout the year on weekends and during the week when weather permits. And due to COVID, we've had to limit the number of people sorting books at any one time. We found it easiest to sort books by broad genres into the open boxes on one side of the garage. Books are then displayed by more specific labels at the sale. For instance, poetry and plays are put in the nonfiction box, but they have their own section at the sale. We had to add additional shelves because we started getting so many books, and we've been collecting paper boxes. So when you see that picture on the right, now when we have them sitting out, it looks really nice and neat because they're all in the same kind of box. Let's see here. I write notes. Some boxes are stored at Junction Bowl and member garages. The challenge of sorting over 5,000 donated books is manageable simply because we have so much volunteer help. We promote our sale using a wide range of communications. This year, we hope to secure time on a local radio station for an interview about our friends and the sale. We invite local authors to display their books for a meet and greet at the back of our sale room. In 2020, we had to limit the number of authors to just one due to room capacity limits and social distancing requirements. We create social media ads and flyers printed by members to be posted around the area before the sale. Local newspapers publish articles and photos we send. Each time articles are published or posted on Facebook, donations pour in. Members go to garage sales and other book sales requesting donations of their leftovers. We also receive many books from people who are downsizing their own or their parents' collections. Isanti banks add our message to their leaderboards. We also are listed on booksalefinder.com, which is a free resource. The East Central Regional Library in Cambridge posts our flyers. We make a list of places to post flyers and members sign up to contact them. The main thing is to just ask. The week of the sale is always a really busy one. Preparations actually start on the Sunday afternoon in order to be ready for the sale on Friday morning. Tables are arranged at the Junction Bowl banquet room. Genre signs and acrylic display boards are placed on the tables to help with the placement of the boxes when they arrive. Signs and prices and membership information are displayed around the room using removable tape. The small bookshelves are brought in to add vertical space on the tables. At our last event, we had risers made by one of our members to add space along the walls and to separate the center tables. We purchased several dozen bookends to keep everything neat. This attention to detail paid off since we heard many compliments on our orderly layout. During the sale, volunteers continue to straighten and organize items to make sure the areas stay appealing. On Monday, boxes of books are moved into the sale room and placed under or near the tables by genre. Several volunteers are needed for this part of the process since it involves a lot of lifting, loading, and unloading. Everyone wears a mask and keeps a distance between volunteers. Hand sanitizer is available throughout the entire process. Volunteers sign in and out so we can keep track of what we need in the future and so we know who to thank. We typically have about 15 to 20 volunteers throughout the project. Although we don't have, on Thursday evening, 2 volunteers drive around town to place directional street signs. A map with locations is marked in order to simplify the process. Although we don't have a priority access time for our sale, volunteers may keep any books they want as appreciation for their donated time and energy. We also offer incentives to shoppers. Each person receives a file bookmark and a free book coupon redeemable at the Isanti Outreach Library. This gives us a chance to be sure everyone knows about the outreach site and encourages people to go there. Our sale hours are Friday from 9 to 6 and Saturday from 9 to 3. Most books are priced at 25 cents each. We also offer a buck a bag special from noon to 3 on Saturday. Shoppers buy a Walmart-sized plastic bag and get whatever they can fit into it for just $1. This is a very popular option and helps to clear out even more of our inventory. We found that it is most efficient to have a volunteer just outside the door to distribute the dollar bags, which are paid for at checkout. Sometimes people will ask why we only charge 25 cents per book when we could charge more. Our answer is this. Our goal is to get books into the hands of the community. Making money is a secondary reason for our sale. I have seen a mother tell her children they can each get 1 book. If we charged more, they may not even have been able to get that many. In 2015, our total book sale income was $234. In 2020, it was $587. We supply tote bags and boxes for shoppers. The bags are collected when we receive book donations in them. We have a cash donation container located prominently on the checkout table, and many shoppers will put their change or other donations in it. Last year, we collected $75 of those donations alone. In order to keep track of how many books we sell, we print file return address labels and apply them to the back of each book as it is purchased. We tell patrons that this way they'll know who to donate the book to when they're done reading it. We do ask permission from the patron first in case they're buying the book for a gift or resale. Then we enter those numbers on a tablet to add in later. For our October sale, we had to make adjustments due to COVID. So in order to stay within the room capacity limits, we had a volunteer outside the door handing out admission tickets to control the number of people, including volunteers, in the room. This actually became an idea we'll continue to use in the future. Before, we never really knew exactly how many people came to our sale. Thanks to the admission tickets, we found out that we had 213 shoppers. We have found that we need at least 6 to 8 volunteers for the final step of the sale, since all remaining items are boxed and labeled for their future use. Some boxes are moved to our sales shelves at the Isani Outreach Library. Assortment boxes are saved for each of our give and take shelves, and many boxes are packed for donating to the Women's Prison Book Project in Minneapolis. Any leftover books are sold to a bookseller who happened to come by as we were packing up. He took everything that was left and offered to do the same after our future sales. All indoor and outdoor signs, shelves, risers, and tables are collected and stored for the next sale. Members sometimes offer books for purchase at garage sales, senior dining functions, and other community events. We also have give and take shelves at 2 member homes and a few businesses. We plan to increase the number of businesses after COVID allows more in-person shopping. Next time, we plan to have book sale maps available for shoppers to help them find the books they want. Although we are tired, exhausted, at the end of the sale, we're really proud of our success, and we start making notes right away to plan for the next year. Volunteers and donors are gratefully recognized and sincerely thanked. Book donations start arriving within weeks of our sale, so the sorting and storing begins again soon after. Thank you to MALF for this webinar opportunity and for its continued support of library friends. We really appreciate it. The end.
Wow, thank you, Susie. I was taking notes and thinking, wow, that's a great idea. I think that one of the things I always find with book sales is that they're so messy, and we try to organize them by genre, but your setup really looked as if things kept in nice order and that you've got friends continuing to keep things orderly as the sale goes on. The 2 questions that came specifically for you is, could you share the name and the contact information for the vendor that took your leftover books? I don't, he or she may not want to be inundated with 130 Friends members who are attending this workshop, but obviously there might be somebody that could use that service. And this is with COVID specific, so we might come back to it as well, but I'll ask it now because it came up. Did you accept cash during this sale? How did you handle that with COVID?
We used a lot of hand sanitizer.
Okay.
Which we had that in different places, but right by our checkout, we accepted checks and cash. So that wasn't a problem. Okay. And I don't have the name of the person who took those books. It was somebody who lives near Junction Bowl. And I'd have to go look it up. I don't remember. I don't know that he's in the market to get books from other places, but I can certainly find out if someone wants to, contact me via email or our website and ask. But
so why don't you do this? Find out the name of the person and share that information with David. And then if somebody wants that information, they can contact the MALF office, and David can have a sort of a generic response, especially if the person that is only going to be limited to, let's say, a 50-mile radius of Isanti. I mean, right. We don't want necessarily somebody calling from Casson or Rochester, sure. 3 hours away. So, okay. I'm looking at the list. I'm trying to figure out how to reword this one. I guess this might be, again, something for general. Oh, that's someone sharing that they do a free will offering. So you're in good company. Mm-hmm. And, the question, how do you deliver the books to the women's prison?
Okay, there's a bookstore in, I believe it's Minneapolis. One of our volunteer couples takes boxes to, I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of the place off the top of my head, but it's a certain bookstore that they take it to. And they have a limit of how many books they can take at a time. But if you, I can put that information, I can send that to David too. I don't go there myself, so it's not at the top of my head. And so I will send that too. Okay.
Okay. And then maybe the last one for you, and this would actually somewhat be generic as well. Do you have a special spot for dealing with collectibles, or are you selling, as you say, are you selling everything at 25 cents and regardless of the genre, regardless of the condition or the size?
The only things that we mark differently are vintage books. And one of our members goes online and checks what, the values are. And so we'll price those higher, but we found if we price them very high, they don't sell anyway. So we don't charge a whole lot for them because we don't want to get stuck with them. We'd rather that they get out and about. Occasionally we'll get a donation with a lot of the really big, beautiful coffee table books. And so we might put $1 on each of those. But again, we really limit our pricing because we don't want to have them at the end of the sale. we want them out in the community. And if the way to do that is to keep them inexpensive, that's what we want to do.
And David is reminding me that, especially with some of these more generic questions, we can sort of filter them in as we go along. So Susie, I want to thank you. And now we're going to hear from Brooke and Fergus Falls. So we're going to go from the east side of the state to the west side of the state. And in a few minutes, we'll even go further west. So Brooke, as I mentioned, is with the Fergus Falls Friends of the Library. They have approximately 130 members and that serve the library and the patrons of Otter Tail County. In 2020, the group gave more than $21,000 in support. Recent funding priorities have included a library website upgrade, guest speakers, kits for book clubs, meeting over Zoom, makerspace classes, and you will note from her slide that it's a new library. It's beautiful. I've been there. And they've even had to have an aquarium. Again, just a lovely feature. Like many friends groups, they drum up most of this financial support from member dues and used book sale revenues. Modes of sale have included silent auction. And while many friends coordinate auctions, few think to combine these two mainstays. So Brooke, tell us about your silent auctions and your book sales.
Well, I'm going to tell the story of book sales as I see it. And I want to thank MALF for this webinar and for the opportunity to speak. I think we're maybe a little different because we haven't had a book sale per se since 2017. And there's a couple of reasons why. So I have volunteered at a book sale, but I have not been intimately involved in the orchestration of the 3-day event. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we go along. But as far as the library is concerned, this is the story of our journey. We had a renewal project that was completed in 2018. So in 2017 and a part of 2018, we were in a temporary location and did little in terms of book sales other than a cart that we could wheel around in the library with a sign on it and a cash box. And such as it was, book sales and the cart brought in $3,000 a year. So we moved into this beautiful new facility in 2019, and we doubled our footprint as a library. And part of the beauty of that was we went from the book sale, as you see on the left in 2017, to a bookstore with about 150 square feet of retail space and about 100 square feet in a closet off to the right for storage. And I want to point out that the woman on the far right of the photo on the left is one of our mainstays in the bookstore now. So from the book sale came many wonderful volunteers. Our book sale was a 3-day event, Thursday, Friday, and into Saturday, with Thursday being a member-only preview sale. And that's how it worked at that time. So here we are in our new space. As you can see, we've got a lot of shelving, and we got a new logo, and we got signs, and we have an identity, I think, in the community that we maybe didn't have before. We're visible, and people know who we are and where we are. We've got 5 volunteers that are working regularly on the bookstore committee. Each of us take a day, and we make sure that our inventory is rotated and fresh, and nothing stays on our floor longer than 3 months. So remember that, because we didn't necessarily think through the consequences of pulling things away after 3 months. And then what do we do, right? So that question remains. So here we are. We've had a wonderful influx of DVDs. So we have 2 shelves of DVDs. In the midst of COVID, a local arts center that gets free promo musical CDs all the time for musicians gave us hundreds of musical CDs that they would never use or never bring these people to Fergus Falls. So we've got quite a lot of that kind of media at this point. On the right-hand side, you see our adult fiction section. Just kind of showing you how we've grown and organized. Children's books here on the left, and young adult teen fiction on the right. We cannot keep children's books in stock. They literally fly off the shelves. So 2019, we were pretty full of ourselves because we had a wonderful year. We had bookstore sales of 5,800 and silent auctions of 1,900. And we were proud of saying we will no longer have book sales, the big event book sales. So remember that theme as part of our story. We learned a lot. We learned a lot about working with each other. And if anything, I think we have lifted up the idea that our used bookstore is a community service, and echoing what Susie said about getting books into the hands of people who maybe would not have owned a book or had a book. One of the other fun phenomenon that has happened is we see the same book come through 3, 4 times. So people are reading it, bringing it back. And I liked Susie's idea of labeling them to remind them where the book came from and maybe where it could land. So on to COVID. 2020, as we all know, was a year like no other. We learned to go with the flow. In mid-March, the library shut down, as many things did. And we decided to focus. We kind of shut down for a month. I mean, we didn't know what to do. We sent each other emails and, felt sorry for each other and wanted to see each other and be together, and all the things that slammed the brakes on for us riddled us. But by April, we were thinking about getting back in the bookstore, and April is our annual meeting month and our membership month. So we started pushing memberships. And just as a sidelight, I want to say, in the midst of COVID, not only did we increase bookstore sales, but we raised over $11,000 in memberships, which that's more than double any year we had ever had before. So part of it is riding the wave of the capital campaign. And part of it, I think, also is people recognizing our logo and our identity and recognizing what we were doing for the community. So we're grateful for that, and we're grateful that Fergus Falls stepped up and took care of us. So if we learned anything in 2020, it was to go with the flow. And so we did. There were lots of challenges. We opened the library again on June 1st. And as we all had, new rules, social distancing, hand sanitizer, masks, number of people limited to 10 people in the library at a time. Books were quarantined, including ours, for 72 hours. We have two after hours depositories. And so book donations came into those at the same time as people were returning their books. As you can see, we had to limit the number of people in the bookstore by our sign here. So, you know, we went with it. We follow the Fergus Falls Public Library material donation policy. All books that are donated come through them first, and then they pass them on to us. What we didn't expect during COVID is everyone, including the library, cleaned house. And we had a huge influx of books, even during the time the library was closed. So the challenge became twofold. One is, not a single one of us wants to throw a book away. And that got to be at times a little bit stressful for all of us, because sorting is very subjective. And there were days when I may have taken a bestseller and thrown it into the recycling box, and my colleague came along and pulled it out. And so not only among us, so we stepped up to handing it back to the library staff, because we weren't totally confident that we were honoring the value of what we had in terms of sorting. So in the midst of all of this, we got more space in the staff workroom for sorting. And that was a blessing. And we learned, if in doubt, ask a librarian. Not the first time we learned that lesson, but we're still learning on the sorting. We also had a crisis with recycling because the recycling center shut down. And when the recycling center reopened, they no longer accepted our books. They would accept our books if we ripped the covers off of them, and then they would throw them away. So we started recycling. We had a volunteer who was taking them to the recycling center, and the recycling center had a volunteer who started a little library at the recycling center. I mean, it's a wonderful story, but it all fell apart during COVID. And so we started doing our own recycling at the library and putting the recycled books into the bin. The library staff started a free cart so that we weren't throwing away books. And like Susie mentioned from Ms. Santee, we got involved with the Women's Prison Project. We got involved with our local jail ministry, assisted living facilities, the crisis center, the crisis shelter. So there were lots of outreach activities that we participated in and delivered boxes of books to people, or people picked up boxes of books from us. So new initiatives there and new partnerships with nonprofits that we maybe didn't have in the past. And that's good. It makes our community service mission strengthened, and we're not throwing away books. So we've accomplished that goal. So 2020 was a great year, and a lot of good came of it. I will say probably the most wonderful thing that came of it is our very strong and respectful and grateful appreciation of staff and volunteers working together, and all the dynamics of human nature in a time when none of us knew what the rules were and had to learn them as we went along and bow to the protocols that the library set up and that sort of thing. So I can't say enough about the Rockstar volunteers that we have. The 5 people on the committee that are holding that bookstore together are phenomenal, and they have built a wonderfully curated bookstore that we can be proud of and people come to, and we have a lot of repeat business. So it's all about the people and the relationships that we've built. So in the spirit of going with the flow of COVID, we 3 things sort of come to mind. Promotion, what do we do with extraordinary books? And the secret of the silent auctions. We had always done auctions, but we've never done them quite like we have in the past year. So I'll show you a little bit about that. So promotion, just outside of the bookstore, we have this wonderful shadow box that a volunteer built and gave to us. And we have a little recognition plaque on the bottom of it, but during COVID especially, we realized we don't need to just use this to sell mugs and book bags. We can be promoting what we do and the partnership with our community. So one of the volunteers on the bookstore committee has taken that on, and she changes it up monthly, if not every 6 weeks. So that's been a visible tool for us. And we've had little girls standing saying, I want 2 mugs and I want those specific 2 mugs. So we have to unlock the shadow box. So we know it's working and it's getting attention and selling some things for us and ideas for us. We have gotten more intentional about using the Fergus Falls Public Library newsletter, which is a wonderful vehicle, and they have a far greater distribution than we ever would. So they've done a great job of helping us promote membership and the bookstore and all of those. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. All of those sorts of things. Okay, talked about the shadow box, talked about the newsletter. All right. In 2020, closed 2.5 months, we sold used books for a total of $3,978, which is right about on par with what we did in 2019. And one of the things that we did, we sell books for $1 or $2, children's books 25 cents, 50 cents, with extraordinary books, is to turn the shelves like a bookstore would and have the face out books. And if we think it's a valuable book, we'll put anything from $3 to $10 on it, you know, a beautiful coffee table book, whatever. So that's one of the ways that we've promoted some of our higher quality arty books and coffee table books and collector type books. So kudos to our genius bookstore people for the featured books section at the library, bookstore, and then we go to the silent auctions. So we know we've got some valuable books, and we know we shouldn't be selling them for $1 or $2, or we receive an entire collection of P.G. Wodehouse or some thematic gardening series, complete sets of books. So we started with a schedule of silent auctions every other month and going with a theme. So at Christmas, we had Christmas books. At Valentine's Day and Women's History Month, we had books on those themes. So we went thematic. I just want to lift this up. In 2019, our silent auction was on this one table, which was a beautiful table from the original Carnegie Library. So, you know, straight out of the late 20s, gorgeous table, but there's no way we could social distance and keep cups for clean pens and dirty pens. And so once again, kudos to our library staff. We've got 6 times the real estate. We're on top of the new books, fiction and nonfiction, running the full length of the entry to the library. So we've pretty much doubled our silent auction space. I talked a little bit about the thematic. At Christmas, we bundled and tied ribbons, and also have had good success with promoting green gifts in the whole spirit of recycling and don't throw a book away and that sort of thing. Cash. We did handle cash. We don't have a PayPal account. We don't have a Venmo account. We know we should, and we're working on it. But one of our rock star bookstore volunteers, Mary Waller, who I know is in the audience today, because I saw her question pop up, came up with this idea for, it's like a gift certificate. And the librarians, bless their hearts, once again, are willing to punch this when someone buys $2 worth of books. They'll punch the card and hand it back to the person, and then they can come back with it. They can also use the punch card at the silent auction. So we just started this in March. It's one of the ways that we hope to cater to the people who don't carry cash. We know you're out there. So that's one of our innovations of the year. Okay, finally, it's 2021 and it's New Year's Eve. And here's our library staff all dressed up like they're going out to celebrate New Year's. And we look forward to 2021. And we're now 3 months into it. So kudos to our library staff. What's going to happen next? Well, we have a strong start already with book sales and auctions for 2021. There's talk of taking books, children's books and cookbooks to the farmers market the last Saturday of the month, which is Kids Day. So we'll box up books and take them on the road and have a table at the farmer's market. We also, back to the issue of sorting and the subjectivity of sorting, we feel woefully inadequate and would like to have someone with a little bit more expertise in rare books and special books. And we think we might know of someone because we have someone who's been coming into the bookstore and buying boxes of books and going online and selling them, which is fine. I mean, we're getting books into the hands of people, and it's a community service, but it would be nice to have that expertise among us. And we know that there are members of MALF that have that expertise, but we need to find it in our own backyard. And believe it or not, we miss our book sales. And I'll tell you why. The camaraderie of the volunteers, it builds team, it identifies potential board members, it gets people involved in the mission of the Friends, it gets word of mouth going. The member benefit is that the first day of the book sale is members are welcome to come and get to the advanced sale. So we lost that member benefit when we stopped with the book sales. And I mentioned the visibility. So guess what? Here's this beautiful plaza, and there is a door in and a door out to the left of our community room. So assuming the gods are smiling down on us and we choose the right 3 days in September, we think we can do crowd control and have some books outside, some books inside, and continue the tradition of the Friends of the Fergus Falls Public Library book sales. We've got volunteers who miss being a part of this. So let's go for it and carry on. So we've come full circle. Never say never. Never say you're never going to do something again, because you never know when it's the right thing to do again. And we've got books in the attic. So that's our story, ever evolving story. And thank you.
Thank you, Brooke. That was exciting. And for those of you who haven't been to the new Fergus Falls Library, you walk in the doors and the Friends store is just immediately to your right. So you saw the beautiful sign. So it's one of those things that you can go and check out your books for the reason, or materials that the reason you went to the library, or you can duck into the Friends store when we're back to normal and we're not limited to one person in the bookstore. Brooke, you did a good job. As I look through the chat, almost everything that was asked, you then somehow came back to and answered without us even having to ask you the question. But the big question that generated a lot of interest was the whole idea with membership, that you doubled membership. So the question was, what is your dues, your rate of dues? And then how do you think, what happened that you were able to just, realize people didn't have as many places to go and things to do, but still doubling your membership is quite a lot.
Well, memberships range from $10 to $500. And visit us on Facebook, and you will see the memberships. And it's not Friends of the Fergus Falls Public Library, but Fergus Falls Public Library Friends. But we really are the Friends of the Fergus Falls Public Library. How we doubled it, I think a lot of it was putting pledge cards in the hands of people as they came to the library and checked out books. We put pledge cards in book kits. We have a librarian who walked around and slipped pledge cards into random books on the shelves. We have put them in the books that went out curbside. We have put them in the reserve books that people come in and pick up or get curbside. But probably the secret weapon was working with the city and getting permission to put a membership flyer in the city utility bill. So it went to 5,500 households in Fergus Falls. And that design of that utility bill stuffer has kind of got to be our flyer for this year and moving forward. The other thing we did is we added that $500 level last year, which we didn't have before. And interestingly, we didn't get a lot of $500 gifts, but we did get a lot of $250 gifts, which we hadn't gotten in the past.
And then I'll do one more presentation specific question, and then we'll come back to some of the other questions during the general area. The question of, does a library staff get involved in paying for the books as well as doing the punch card?
Paying for the, oh, no.
I'm sorry, I phrased that poorly. Are library staff taking the money?
No. We have a cash box in the bookstore that lots of signs with arrows pointing to it, cashier, cashier. And we have volunteers sitting by the front door telling people to put on their masks and use hand sanitizer, who also catch them on exit saying, you did find the cash box, didn't you? So it's, it takes a village. Everyone is on board. We are so fortunate.
Well, thank you, Brooke. We'll come back to some of these other questions in the general question and answer. So we're going to go from Fergus Falls on the interstate, and we're going to continue going west, and we're going to go to Moorhead. So we're almost out of Minnesota. So we've got Karen Jackowitz with the Friends of the Moorhead Library. The Friends group supports the operations of the largest library in the Lake Agassiz Regional Library system. It's 13 branches, of which Moorhead Public Library is one. After their March 2020 book sales were canceled, or excuse me, after March 20th, like many of us, their book sale was canceled, and then they established a relationship with an experienced online bookseller. This northern Minnesota vendor purchased a truckload of books and took another load to sell on commission. After the business relocated to Las Vegas, the Moorhead friends have become a little bit more selective in what they are handing off to this individual, because they're shipping them to Las Vegas, and they're only dealing with books of higher value for online sales. So Karen's going to tell us a few details about how to handle book sales differently.
Am I still muted? No, I'm not. Okay. Thank you. Wait, where's the play button? Oh, there it is. Sorry. Thank you so much. It has been so much fun listening to the other people and about how you're doing your book sales, some of which we do and some of which we don't. I just wanted to acknowledge our Fringe board and especially our book sale crew. Pam Gibb is my co-chair, and I believe that she is here today. She has been involved in this actually longer than I have, and I'm not sure Moorhead would have book sales if it wasn't for Pam. But now it's a collaborative effort, and it could easily have been her doing this presentation, but you got me today. John has also become more involved with the ongoing work of a book sale in the past couple of years, and we have a really wonderful group of reliable volunteers. I couldn't say enough good things about our volunteer crew. This is a picture at the end of setup at one of our pre-pandemic book sales. This is the main room. There are more tables and 2 5-shelf bookshelves off to the left that you can't see in this picture. And there's also a second smaller room where we'd have the children's books and a few other categories. This is what it looked like when people came. This is pre-pandemic, of course. We wouldn't have that many people without masks altogether now. But as Anne mentioned, in March of 2020, we were supposed to have a book sale that unfortunately got canceled. And we got an email from Jeff Anderson, who had said he was an online bookseller and that he was interested in buying all of the books that we would have sold at our March book sale. And we were a little taken aback at first because we weren't sure we wanted to sell all our books, because we were hoping to have a book sale because we really enjoy our book sales. And I agree completely with Brooke about the camaraderie. And also, we weren't sure that he would pay us as much as we could make during our own sale. But we eventually did get in touch with Jeff Anderson and Kelsey German of Famine Books. And they were at that time in Mount Iron, Minnesota. And they ended up coming to Moorhead twice. They came in June and they came again in July. The first time they took about 40 to 50 boxes of books. And the second time they took over 100. They brought a trailer with them. They paid cash for some of those boxes. It was about $10 to $15 a box. And then other books they took to sell on commission for us. We were a little worried about giving up everything, but they were happy to let us keep things that sell well for us. One example is children's books. Children's books sell really well for us, as other friends have found. And they don't sell very well online. So we keep all the children's, but there are certain things that they particularly like to sell, and we try to give them those. They also gave us ideas about what items would tend to be worth more money and how to find out what the books really are worth. I would not call us experts, but we have learned a lot over the past, 10 months. Unfortunately, they moved to Las Vegas in the fall. So we are still working with them, but we are quite selective about shipping only the higher value books that will get our money back on. But they've been really great to work with, so we didn't want to lose that relationship. All of their prices, at least for the items they list for us, include free shipping, and they have to take off the shipping costs, the tax, and eBay fees. So when we have net sales that are $19.99 and under, our commission is 30%. That increases to 70% for any net sales over $1,000. We have not had any sales at that level yet, but we do have one item that is listed at $2,100, and we do hope that that is going to sell at some point. We have, however, sold several things at the 60% commission rate, so it has worked out very well that way. When a couple of former members of our board had spoken to a bookstore owner in Minnesota about possibly selling things on commission, they were talking about 30 or 35% commission, no matter how much it sold for. So I think this was a pretty generous commission scale. Bottom lines of our work with Famine, our total net earnings have been more than $3,400 since June of 2020 when they first came. We average more than $240 per month in commissions. Shipping of media mail has cost us $215 for 6 boxes that we've sent since November. These were fairly large boxes, and books are heavy, so that wasn't surprising. We also put insurance on some of them, but even with that, the $3,400 takes out the shipping costs. Pricing the books can be time consuming, but we've been fairly accurate, so we feel good about our pricing. On the last shipment that we sent to them, we had estimated that the books were worth a little over $1,000, and they ended up listing them at a little under $1,300. So we feel like we did a pretty good job of picking the books that will still get us a profit even after the shipping costs. And Famine Books reaches a much broader audience than our local sales to sell specialty items. So there are things like that $2,100 item that I don't think the right person would walk into the Moorhead Library at one of our sales. And so it's valuable to us to have that broader audience. And they have been really great to work with. So if anyone is interested, they would be happy to talk to you about any specialty items you might want to sell. We also done a couple of other things that I wanted to talk about. We had considered getting a storefront at the Moorhead Center Mall. That's a small indoor mall here in Moorhead. And the deal was that we would get rent for free, but we would have to pay for the utilities. We'd have to be out within 15 days if they found a paying tenant for the space. But we chose a potential location not long before the pandemic started. We liked it because it was near the central atrium and the entrance to City Hall, because the entrance to Moorhead City Hall is inside the mall. There was direct access to the storage areas from the parking lot, so it would make it easier to bring boxes of books straight into the back rather than having to bring them through the mall. It was a moderate size. The utilities fees would be higher for a larger space, and so we didn't want more space than we could manage for a store. But we dropped that idea when the pandemic started and retail was closing down or slowing down, and we have not gone back to it, at least not yet. However, there is a spring pop-up shopping event coming up at the Moorhead Center Mall on Saturday, April 24th. We'll be going and selling some books, friends t-shirts, and bags. We only get 2 tables there, so I don't know if it's going to be a huge fundraiser for us, but we're thinking about it as community outreach and as advertising for our other book selling opportunities. So we'll have handouts about other events that are going on or coming up, starting with the bag sale. We decided a week and a half ago on Thursday that we should set up a bag sale in April. And so on Tuesday morning, 9 of us got together and we set up this book sale behind the desk on the main floor of our library. It took us about an hour and a half. It's $5 a bag. Our library staff takes payments, so we don't have to have volunteers there all the time, and the sale is open the entire hours that the library is open. The friends go in daily and we tidy up and we add books as things sell. We had added more than 35 boxes worth of books in the first 4 days. The staff told us that, excuse me, Staff told us that people have been very excited, and it has been very crowded and very busy, which we can tell by the number of books that have disappeared. Also, if people bring back a friend's cloth bag, they get the full bag for $4 instead of $5. That is a deal that we have at any of our friends' bag sales, not the regular sales where we have price per book, but the bag sales. Not too many people take us up on it, but a few have. We are also having an outdoor mini sale coming up on May 13th through 15th. This is a picture of our first outdoor mini sale, which was last September as a COVID response. We decided to go outdoors. There were only 6 tables and a couple of carts, and there were also a few things that you can't see in this picture that are behind me that were like set out in boxes and such, but it went really well. It was a very successful sale. And our regular customers were thrilled. They were very enthusiastic when they showed up. So we're doing this again in May and hoping for good weather. If not, we'll take everything into the garage, which did happen to us on the 3rd day of this earlier sale. That is Booker the Owl. He is the Laurel mascot, and he visited us at our outdoor sale. And the last new thing is we have a new display case that we put books that were published in 2019, 2020, and 21. We price them from $3 to $6, depending on the year of publication and whether they're hardcover or paperback. Well, and there's one signed one in there also. And then we have Free and Friends t-shirts and bags and other specially priced items. And this is what that looks like. And okay, this is contact information. I check the Friends of the Moorhead Library Gmail fairly regularly. If anyone is interested in higher priced items or some expertise, you can contact Jeff and Kelsey. They would be happy to work with you. They've been very wonderful to work with. They're very supportive of libraries and friends groups. They are just far away now, which is unfortunate. And I thought I wanted to add something in response to what came up earlier, and now I can't remember what it was. I apologize. But thank you so much. I know I just went through a whole bunch of things very quickly, but I know I had limited time.
Karen, thank you. Wow, that was fascinating. I've put the link for the eBay in the chat, and I will also type in the Gmail account when we get finished with the Q&A. The only question that was specific to your presentation was, would you be willing to share the contact information? And you've already done that.
Yes, I did check with Jeff and Kelsey when I was going to do this program to make sure that they would be okay with that. And they were very happy to talk to anybody. And in fact, I think at the time they contacted us. They had contacted some other people whose sales were canceled. Oh, that was one thing I was going to mention. Susie talked about Bookfinder or booksalefinder.com. I think that's how Jeff found us, was because we were on that. And I think they contacted other places and nobody else contacted them. We ended up being the only ones, but it has worked out really well for us and for them.
So Melissa Bruchon, as one of our MALF board members who found all these marvelous speakers, she is sort of feeding me a question. So she has said, tell them about the paperback book that you would have sold for a quarter and they sold for ?
Yes, we sell mass market paperbacks actually for 10 cents. So it was a little paperback. It was an old science fiction mass market paperback. It sold for them for over $80. Our commission was over 40. So that was a book that we would have sold for 10 cents and we ended up getting $40 for it. There was also another set of 5 mass market paperbacks that we made about 30. That would have been 50 cents because it was 5 for the 10 cents each. And we made almost 30 on that. So we have definitely gotten some very good deals through this.
Excellent. Okay, so we've got, we'll come back to Karen during the general Q&A. I'm going to move on to Susan Miller. So we've gone all the way across Minnesota, and now we're going to come back and we're going big, you know, metro area with the Friends of the Ramsey County Library. This Friends group is well known because they run some of the upper Midwest most lucrative book sales. In an average non-pandemic year, the Roseville operation brings in $27,000 to $30,000. Now, before you go, oh my goodness, remember, it is a big library and it is a bigger population than those of you living around the greater part of Minnesota. But still, great work, Susan. In response to COVID, the group pivoted first to curbside book sales, a move that they found home for many needed books for 820 bags, in fact. And then they began with their coming out of their accumulated inventory. And most recently, they've launched a sustainable, I love that word, sustainable virtual used bookstore that operates through Google Sheets. So, Susan, tell us how you're running things in Ramsey County.
Well, thank you. It's been a real pleasure to be here with you all and to share all of your interesting ideas for how you've all adapted during the COVID pandemic. I've been asked as the head of the Friends of the Ramsey County Library's retail committee to share with you the two things that we came up with to deal with what I have come to think of as the COVID earthquake and the book tsunami. In March of 2020, all of the Friends bookstore activities were put on hold. Our bookstores were closed. We stopped taking donations from the public, and the not inconsiderable amount of resources that we got from our bookstore operations ceased entirely. But the loss of money wasn't the only problem that we faced. Our libraries used the period of public closure to do some very rigorous weeding of their collections. And the weeds were rapidly filling up all the available space that we had in our library storage rooms. By June of 2020, we were already renting 3 large storage pods, and they were already completely full of library weeds. By that time, it had become abundantly clear that we would be drowning in books before the COVID crisis ended, unless we came up with a way to both sell books without a bookstore and to be able to do it in some kind of safe, socially distanced manner. The first idea we came up with was the curbside bag sale. Here are a couple of pictures from what that bag sale looked like. Thank God we had dry weather. The bag sale was held 3 days per week during the month of September. We decided to sell bags at $5 a bag with a minimum of 10 books in each bag. The genres, the bags were all pre-packaged and pre-sorted. We kept the genres broad intentionally just to facilitate assembly and storage. Because of some, very rigorous COVID protocols, we had to keep the number of volunteers involved in this activity to the absolute minimum. Only one volunteer could be in a storage pod at a time. Basically, 2 ladies spent all summer bagging books. They did a terrific job. Some of the genres sold better than others. General fiction sold very well. Mystery and suspense, biography and memoir, we couldn't bag enough of that stuff. Other genres, if we are to do this again, we may limit our genres further. Science fiction and fantasy, which I personally love, did not do very well. And things like Westerns, I know that there are some cowboys out there, but you guys are thin on the range, let's put it that way. We required that people contact us ahead of time and schedule the number of bags that they wanted so that we could control how many people were going to be showing up in the parking lot at any one time. We also wanted to keep people from getting impatient, getting out of their cars and walking up to the bags, clustering around the volunteers and trying to go through the bags. So we required them to email us with the number of bags they wanted in the genres they wanted, and to give us 2 days when they would be available to come in for pickup. Then as the orders started coming in, we kind of had a sort of 100 bag limit per day. So if we were reaching that 100 bag limit, then we would start bumping people to their second preferred pickup date. Patrons were asked to remain in their cars when they drove up to the pickup location, and were told to bring the exact change or a check so that we didn't have to make change with them. We did pretty extensive advertising of the sale. And in this respect, the librarians in our system just did a terrific job of making sure that every hold bag that they put together for the library patrons during the grab and go pickup of their library materials, every hold bag got a flyer for our upcoming bag sale. We did a fair amount of member email blasts, and just really tried to hit social media hard so that people knew that ahead of time they had to place an order with us. The curbside bag sale was, to my way of thinking, an astonishing success. When we first floated this idea, I was saying to people, really, you think people are going to want to buy a bunch of books that they haven't been able to select for themselves? But we netted $3,350. But the real thing is that we got rid of 820 bags. That's 8,200 books found new homes. It was an absolutely stunning display of support from our local community of readers who were willing to take home, 8,200 books that they hadn't seen ahead of time. It was just wonderful. Bottom line was we were able to empty those 3 storage containers, which were frankly starting to, eat up funds in rental fees. The other thing that was really great about the bag sale is that we used it to promote the upcoming launch of our virtual used bookstore that I'll talk about in a moment. So every person that drove up to pick up a bag of books got a flyer about the upcoming virtual bookstore and a brief description of what it was going to look like and how they would access it. The curbside bag sale was just really a stunning success for us. Let's talk now about the virtual used bookstore, which internally we affectionately refer to as the VUB. It's a shame we couldn't come up with a more poetic or exotic name for our bookstore, but Amazon and Alibaba were already taken, so we're left with VUB. By late summer 2020, it was clear to us that our traditional bookstores would not be reopening in 2020. Our bookstores, in fact, remain closed. We hope to open them, our traditional bookstores, later in the year, but that is still up in the air, and it really depends on just how quickly our state gets COVID under control. To stay in the used book selling business, we had to find some way to allow our patrons to remotely browse our inventory and pick up books safely within our current COVID protocols. In October 2020, we opened our virtual used bookstore using Google Drive and Google Sheets. Google Sheets has some real advantages. First of all, it is free. And any of you that have investigated some of the other book selling platforms know that any of those platforms take, a fairly substantial cut of, your sale of any book. And because we try to price our books at roughly $1 to $5, both because we want to get good books into the hands of anybody that, can pay for that, and also because we're selling a lot of library weeds, a lot of those other platforms just didn't always seem to be a good fit for us. Google Sheets is a completely web-based application, and it gives you ample free cloud storage. Right now, we've got listed probably a little over 4,000 individual items, and we aren't even remotely close to outstripping our cloud storage and having to buy storage space. By using a web-based application, we were able to do most of our work remotely from our homes. We invested in a couple of little Bluetooth barcode scanners, and we would send a volunteer into our storage rooms and just start rapidly scanning, ISBN numbers, which we then easily copied into a Google Sheet, and then a selection of volunteers working from home would look up each ISBN online, complete its entry on the Google Sheet, by supplying author, title, cover image, price. The beauty of going with Google Sheets is that it allowed us to basically resume selling, but within our existing business practices. By that, I mean keeping our price range within roughly $1 to $5. We were allowed to just continue restricting ourselves to local pickup. We really don't have enough volunteers right now or the desire to get into shipping, book orders. And we were able to keep up with our usual practice of just taking payment in simple cash payment or a check in our Dropbox. Here's a sample of some of the ways we've been advertising the virtual bookstore. We use bookmarks, flyers that we set out at the library. Email blasts are very important, and anything on social media. One of our volunteers came up with the genius idea of creating some bookmarks, which you'll see right here in the center, because we wanted to have something that would be handed out to library users. We put these by the checkout kiosks in the hopes that people would pick up a bookmark when they're checking out a book, take it with them, and it would be something that would kind of stick. It would stay in their hands, in their homes for a while, so that maybe a month later, they'd see the bookmark and think, hey, let's go check out that online service. This is the front door to the virtual bookstore. It's just a web page on our website. You enter the virtual bookstore by clicking on any of these colored category buttons. Clicking on any of those buttons takes you into its associated Google Sheet. And this is what one of them looks like. This happens to be the fiction virtual bookstore. It's a simple spreadsheet. Anybody that's ever used a spreadsheet will know how to use this. You can either just scroll down to browse. We sort the sheet by genre, by author, and then by title. However, if you know that you're looking for a specific author, a specific genre, just doing a Control F will open up a little search box, and then you can jump down to the area that you're interested in. Additionally, a Google Sheet has the ability to allow sorting and filter views. So you can go to the data tab and create your own sort, and you can then just limit your view of what you're seeing. For example, if you only want to see the books that we have added within the last week, you can easily just create a view of just those books. I can always tell when some of my customers are familiar with the spreadsheet and how to use filter views, because you can tell by the method that they're ordering that they figured it out, and they're able to just filter down to exactly what they want to look at. The nice thing about this is that when somebody is using a filter view, no one else is seeing that. That's just for that individual person. And nothing that one of our visitors to the virtual bookstore could do would corrupt the sheet. We have set the rights to viewing this so that, as you can see here, this person is viewing the sheet only as view only. So we don't have to worry about people accidentally corrupting it or accidentally deleting something. By going to this link, anyone, anywhere on the internet can browse our sheets. It's just that they have to come to, one of our libraries to pick the book up. Ordering from Bub is as simple as sending the bookstore an email. We also do allow people to call and leave a message on our bookstore's voicemail. A number of our patrons do not have email access. They might have access to a computer at a library, but they don't have an email account. So we wanted to make sure that everybody could order from us if they wanted to. We just ask that people identify their requests by ISBN number or by a title. We tried to somewhat automate the ordering process by embedding, and I'll back up here, embedding hyperlinks here in the location column. And if you click on one of those links, and if your device is set up with an email utility, it will create an email for you directed to the friends, and it will populate the ISBN number from that row that you clicked on for us. If you want to order 15 books, just send us 15 emails. At the end of each day, I go into our email account. I see, who's ordered what. I put together, a little order form. I collate all those orders, put together an order form, and then I email those orders to our volunteers that I know are going to be picking and packaging orders the next morning. The next day, somebody goes to our storage area, pulls books that have been ordered, puts them in a bag, labels the bag with the customer's name and the amount that's due. Then they ping me back and tell me, yep, the orders are all ready for today. Notify the people that the orders are ready for pickup. I have a simple template here in my bookstore's Outlook account. And I send this email back to people saying, your request is now available. The amount you need to bring in is this much. This is how you pay. And I send it off to them. Has it been a success? Well, since October, we have sold 3,008 individual items just through our spreadsheets for a total of $5,634. Currently, our sales are running at about $1,000 per month. Up till now, we have only operated out of one of our libraries. In a few days, we're going to be opening up, pickups from the inventory we have at another one of our libraries. And we're hoping that that library will be the Roseville Library, and we're hoping that will dramatically increase our numbers, because Roseville has always been our most robust bookstore. The other, The other thing that makes VUB a success for us is that it isn't just about the money that we're taking in. When we're communicating with our patrons in this way, electronically, we're also harvesting email addresses from all the people that send us orders. And while we don't abuse that, we don't pester people with a lot of emails, I can promise you that the next time we hold a fundraiser or a membership drive, all those people that placed orders are going to be hearing from us. There are some challenges to trying to sell books via a spreadsheet. The first thing is that you need to have regular, consistent effort to keep yourself visible to people. With our traditional bookstores, they're oftentimes placed near the exits to our libraries, and people who are coming into the libraries for other reasons see the bookstore and go, oh yeah, I'll browse before I leave. Or so we used to get a lot of impulse buys from people. Well, now people have to remember to seek us out. So that's why you've got to really hit the social media and the newsletters hard. I can always tell when it's been a while since we've done any social media on the virtual bookstore because my sales are starting to drop off. Secondly, some genres that ordinarily sold very well in the physical bookstores are struggling to sell via the spreadsheet. A typical example would be general fiction. Oftentimes the titles of a general fiction book don't always really tell you a lot about what the book is about. You know, the title Gone Girl, okay? What's that about? There's one book that we just, you know, we do have a hard time keeping on the sheets. It's called There. It's a great book by an up-and-coming Native American writer, I think out of California. And if you happen to have listened to NPR recently, or you've heard the buzz about There, you know what the book is about, but the title doesn't tell you. So we have struggled to sell some of our general fiction stuff. To compensate, we have started embedding hyperlinks in our spreadsheet to the author's descriptions of their novels, if we can easily find that. It may be helping a little bit. I'm not sure at this point whether doing all that extra hyperlinking is worth the effort that it's taking to do it. We're just going to have to see. Other genres sell fabulously off of our spreadsheet. Biography and memoir, history books sell very well, but that's usually because their titles tell you what the books are about. If the title of your book is the Life and Times of Winston Churchill, you know what you're getting when you buy that book. Thirdly, there needs to be a commitment to rigorous inventory control. I don't know what all of your storage rooms were like, in the pre-COVID era, but we were a little loosey-goosey about how we stored things, and genre sorts would show up in one place at one time, and then a volunteer would think, oh, let's create another category over here. And now we have to be much more intentional about how we organize our space, so that anything that's going into our storage rooms has to be barcode scanned first, and it has to be stored in a way that our order volunteers can easily find the book without having to spend an hour and a half digging through the stacks. Lastly, you have to cultivate a core group of volunteers who have some decent computer keying skills. And also they need to have a good desktop computer at home to work from, or at minimum, a widescreen laptop. While I truly do love my little mobile devices, this is not the sort of work that you can do on your smartphones. Will the virtual used bookstore outlive face masks? Probably. We plan to continue using, selling via spreadsheet for a full 4 months after we open up our physical bookstores, whenever that will be. At that time, we will review the sales numbers and assess whether the amount of money we're taking in is worth the work that it takes to maintain it. This is more work than we used to do with our traditional bookstores. We used to just, do some sorting in an afternoon, fill a few shelves, and then we were done. But I will say that the heavy lifting to this is done during the initial setup. We tried to go live with about at least 300 books per sheet. And that probably took about a month to a month and a half of work with about 4 or 5 dedicated volunteers. But I think we're finding that the weekly maintenance of the sheets really is not that burdensome. And I'm pretty sure that we will be continuing it once life has, praise God, gotten back to normal for all of us. And I'm ready for any questions that people might have about either bag sales or selling on a spreadsheet.
Once again, Susan, you did a great job because you were answering questions. They came up and then you answered them. The one question that came up was a more generic one. I'll just go ahead and answer it for the person. What's an e-blast? And as Susan explained, they're capturing email addresses as people are ordering books. And I'm assuming, Susan, you're then with an e-blast, what happens is you're sending one email to everybody on your list.
Yes.
Okay. So thank you. It's one of the things that happens in this virtual environment is, and I just went to a virtual concert on Saturday, and we don't get to share applause with speakers, and even in this environment with the webinar, we don't even get to do jazz hands because everybody has their video off. So thank you to all of our speakers. Just a reminder that you'll see that up in your corner, this has been recorded. So it will be available later. And the chat will also be recorded. So if you've missed an answer that people have been posting, I did want to, a couple of questions have been asked and the respondents, the people asking the question, and then those have been answered. But in case you weren't watching chat, there was a question about sales tax, and certainly Brooke from Fergus Falls with the dedicated store was saying that they pay sales tax. They just take it out of their friend's fund. There was a question about copyright and the use of the book jackets on the Google Sheet. And yes, the artwork is copyrighted either by the publisher or the author or the illustrator, but certainly the book jacket is intended for promotion and would fall under fair use under copyright law. So we're covered there. We've shared some other things in the chat, including the links to Famine Books, booksalefinder.com. And I hope that you've all learned a number of things with regards to some of the things I found really interesting is the use of a book sale map so that, wandering around a bookstore, a book sale is always nice, but sort of knowing where my genres are. It's evident that everyone is doing lots of publicity with generating sales, and the idea of admission tickets to just capture, obviously intended to regulate admission during COVID times, but certainly the idea of continuing in the future to actually know how many people are attending your sale. So I see that we populated the smiling faces of all of our speakers. I'm going to go ahead. We have some general questions that we're going to ask. So as you the first two deal with the fact that we're dealing with this unprecedented time that is COVID, that as several people mentioned, that when we first went into lockdown, things sort of stopped. This was unprecedented. We didn't know how long it was going to last. And there was a hope that, tomorrow would be fine. And then when it turned out that it wasn't, we went through all of these marvelous activities, brainstorming and trying to figure out how we were going to do what we have done in the past differently. So what would you do knowing that you've done whatever it was you've just talked about in this COVID time? What refinements are you already thinking about for the activity you talked about? What refinements would you recommend to anybody that wants to take on your activity? And I don't really care who answers. If we have some talk over, we've only got 4 of you, we'll figure out who should talk and then we'll sort of reorder people. So any ideas about refinement?
I would suggest that early on you establish some pretty rigorous sorting requirements. The mistake that we made was thinking that COVID was going to end sooner rather than later, and we let weeds and things just build up to the point where we got to the point where we didn't even have space to work anymore. We should have had much more rigorous sorting criteria in place. One thing that we've come up with doing amongst our sorters, we have put the app for Goodreads on our smartphones.
Mm.
And when we have a lot of books, we tell ourselves, we scan each book that's coming into us, and if it doesn't have a Goodreads rating of 4 or above, then we don't save it in inventory. We either send it. No, we're brutal. We're brutal. We either, if it's in good condition, we might route it to Thrift Books, which is an entity we bulk sell to. If it is not in good condition, we recycle it. And I know that's hard for some people to do, but especially if you're going through a period where the natural means for you to easily sell books has been restricted, you have to be brutal. We can easily adjust that criteria by saying, oh, we're running low on fiction. Let's bump our sort limit down to a 3.5 on Goodreads. But it also helps novice sorters or people that are sorting in a genre that they might not know a lot about to easily see, yeah, several thousand other people thought this was a really good book. Let's keep this one. Or several thousand think this is terrible. Let's find another place to put this.
Other things that those of you who are our panelists would consider refinements to your current environment that you've been working in? Okay, I have another question that's COVID related.
I do
Susie.
have one comment. I'm just so envious of all of you for having a real library where you can set up your sales. We have what used to be a little conference room at City Hall. So there's no way we can do anything using that venue. And so we're very limited at what we can do, but we've just heard so many great ideas today. And I can't wait for our meeting tomorrow morning when we can talk about all the things that we want to add, thanks to your information. I had something else, but I forgot.
Now, Susie, is your group the one that found a local business person to give you some unused space?
Right.
I think that's a genius idea, and that may be something that we would pursue, even though we do have some library space. the space we have is quite limited still. And I just think that's a great idea. It gets people coming to that business location, and you're able to use up a space that isn't being used at relatively low cost.
Right. Well, we don't pay anything for the space. When we first started, we used it from Thursday to Saturday and found out that wasn't enough time. Now we start on Sunday afternoon before the sale, which is on Friday and Saturday. And Mike, who owns the bowling alley, has been just wonderful for reserving a whole, almost a whole week just for our sale, and use his banquet room. And I look at some of your pictures and I think, wow, it would be so much fun to have that much space. Because we are very limited, and we have a shorter period of time. We have to haul everything in, set it up, sell, and take it out. We don't have any, holdover. So luckily, we have a couple of garages that we can store things in, and we have refined our sorting system to make it easier. And when we have questions, I like the Goodreads idea, because it will help us to figure out genres maybe. But we always just say, if you're not sure, put it in what you think it is. And when we're putting them on the tables, somebody will say, oh, this should be in something else, and we'll move it. So we do a lot of shuffling of books as we're setting them up. And we set up from Monday through Thursday to get all the books out and, into the right genres and alphabetical by author. So thank you for all the great tips today, everybody.
So having gone through all of these great work and coming up with new ideas, because this is, we keep using unprecedented and there's no other word. Maybe we need a new synonym. What are you planning to take forward? Now, eventually, even if we are mostly masked or even mostly unmasked, at the point where we think we're going to go back to whatever is our new normal, what things do you think you will continue that you develop during this crazy time?
We will definitely be continuing our relationship with Famine Books, because when we have those high value items, we're just not going to get those sellers walking into the basement of Moorhead Library. And our big conference rooms and stuff are all in the basement. I will say we are hoping to get a new library sometime, and then we're hoping to have a store space, but we don't have that now. I do also want to mention that during Susan's talk, I was texting with Pam, who I mentioned is my co-chair, and we were thinking that Google Sheets sounded really cool, and can we find a way to do that? And so that might be new for us, but we'll definitely consider the relationship with Famine Books. We might very well consider a spot in the mall that we were talking about. Once retail is back to normal, pretty much, it's possible we do that. And I love the outdoor sale if we have good weather, but as a practical matter right now, since our main space is in the basement, it would be a little awkward, but we might consider an indoor-outdoor like Brooke mentioned. Maybe we can do a little of both. But yeah, there's been some really great ideas here. I'm impressed that you sort everything by author, Susie. We sort some sections. One of the things that we started doing was putting the fiction books together by author, and we started kind of subtly during a sale. We'd start putting, John Grisham books together, and we now have an entire section that we refer to as popular authors, but it's really authors we get a lot of. And, we might have an entire box of John Grisham or Danielle Steele that we put underneath the table. And we have had people come up and buy an entire box of James Patterson, except for the duplicates. And people do buy more when you have their favorite authors together. So we do that sorting. That does take a lot of extra time and effort at the sort. And I'll say that's one of the things that I tend to do. So my section is always the last one to be set up during a setup for a sale. But I think it has increased our sales because people will come in and say, oh, I like this book by that author. I'll take these 3 also. And it's worked really well for us, but it is a lot of work. So it depends on how much time and volunteer help you have.
Well, we're fortunate that to have one volunteer who I describe as an alphabetizing savant. That lady, she just loves to put things in alphabetical order. So we're fortunate in that sense.
A couple of just general non-book book sale related questions. And this could be for any one of the 4 of you. Has your group been meeting during COVID times? In person, masked, Zoom, phone calls, email? How have you been carrying on your regular communication?
Zooming. Yeah, Zooming.
Our meetings are on Zoom. We are on email fairly regularly in between meetings. There is a question in the chat about, have you been in the library? Yes, we were in the library even while the library was closed to patrons. The staff would let us in and we'd go hide out in our storage rooms down in the basement away from everybody else with masks on and everything. It was limited numbers, but at the time that Jeff and Kelsey came to buy all those books from us in June and July, or certainly in June, I can't remember when the library opened, but the library was still closed. They were doing curbside pickup, but they were not open for the public to come in, but they made an exception for us. So there were, Pam and I were there and Jeff and Kelsey. So the 4 of us kind of hid out in our section of the basement. Except when we were moving boxes up to their truck and then we were going upstairs. But so yes, we have been and texting and whatever, but we have not had an in-person meeting of our entire Friends board. Our annual meeting was on Zoom.
We have been meeting in person and on Zoom at the same time, because we only have 4 or 5 people that are on our board at any time. So it's easy for us to spread out, and we have tables that are spaced. So, and we wear masks so that we're not getting too close to each other. And then for people who are too far away or rather not be in person, we have the Zoom set up as well. But we don't have a very big group, so it's easy for us to.
There are advantages of being in a small town. Brooke, what about Fergus Falls?
We've been meeting primarily by Zoom for board meetings and things. Committee meetings, depending on the comfort of the people on the committees, have, as allowed by the library, been able to meet in person. And the bookstore committee has been one of those committees that has met in person. And our library staff has let us come in the morning early before they're open to do a lot of our bookstore work, so that we're, not one of the 10 people allowed in the library at the time and taking away from patrons' time. So, but I will say this, as president of the board, it is almost impossible to run a hybrid meeting, and it is almost impossible to please everyone. So in other words, choose one or the other because we've got people who find Zoom is much more effective because they can see and hear, and if they're a lip reader, they can read lips, that sort of thing. But if half the group is in a room with a mask on and then on Zoom, you're losing people. So, you're kind of darned if you do and darned if you don't, I think. So primarily Zoom. Annual meeting is on the 26th of April. That'll be on Zoom. We'll see how that goes. I'll maybe have to call you in Moorhead and get some tips.
I do think that that's going to be one of the challenges as we move back into these real times. I know we're talking about it at church. We have more people going to church on Sunday or shortly thereafter than we normally have in the sanctuary. And we don't want to lose that connection. And yet I want to be with people, when it's safe. And so how to blend that. And I think we're going to be making those kinds of choices, not just for church, not just for friends groups, but our book clubs and all the kinds of things that we normally would gather with. It's sort of a strange world that we're living in.
Have any of you been able to open up your physical bookstores yet? I noticed in one of the photos that you had put up a sign that said, a limit to one person or family. Are people honoring that? Because we have not opened our physical bookstore up yet, and we don't want to burden the librarians with enforcing that that rule. But it's been your experience that people are honoring it and that's good.
We don't have a bookstore, but we did set up that bag sale. It's set up in the library right now. Pam was there this morning. And that has been fine. We don't have a specific number. I mean, Moorhead doesn't have a specific number of people who can be in the library at a time. It is just open. They do request that they do say people wear masks. There's a hand sanitizer. You're supposed to clean your hands when you come in, and they encourage people to keep appropriate distance, but there aren't specific limits. And so it is just open and anyone can be there. I don't know how crowded it's been. When I've been there, it hasn't been especially crowded, but I know it has been busy.
I will say that of any place in Fergus Falls, the safest place, I feel the safest, is at the library.
Well, good. From a librarian's point of view, that makes me feel warm and fuzzy. Thank you.
Well,
thank you, Brooke.
They set the standard.
Well, and we always hope that as a community resource that people feel that way regardless of COVID, but we want the library to be that welcoming environment for everyone in our community. So we're getting to the time where we need to turn this back to Janet. So once again, thank you to Brooke, Karen, Susan, and Susie. Great
ideas. This session is going to be recorded as well as the chat. So if people had to leave early or they came late, or even if you're not here today, but you want to check it out later, this wonderful set of information will be available. So Janet, I will turn it back to you.
I'm needing, David, you will have to restart my video.
Actually, you should be able to. I can send you a prompt, but that's all I can do.
It says the host has stopped it, so you cannot start your video.
You know what? The screen share is predominant, so why don't we just have you do your thing?
Okay.
And if I can fix it in the interim, I will.
Okay. So hello again. It's Janet Eaton. And boy, I got so much out of this today. I just thank everyone involved for, oh, I see it, David, for all of the information and just the way that everything was carried out. I loved it. So thank you. So before we cut you loose, we wanted to clue you into a few things about MALF's upcoming awards and their grant deadlines. Last year, MALF encouraged and assisted friends groups by piloting a new grant initiative, COVID-19 Grant Response Program. 15 member organizations received thousands of dollars to fill fundraising shortfalls or offset important expenses that the Friends coffers just could not otherwise cover. So with coronavirus still defining portions of our daily lives, MALF's board made a decision in February to renew this program for a third cycle. A limited number of $400 grants are available to member organizations who meet all the basic eligibility requirements. And you can find them listed at mnlibraryfriends.org. You'll find the application there as well, and which really should only take no more than 20 to 25 minutes to complete. Unfortunately, I should say, we can't award money to every deserving requester, but we sure hope your group will participate. The deadline is the end of this month, and all applicants will be notified of outcomes in mid-May. Next. And I hope that today's wonderful panelists are listening closely here. Our flagship Evie Nordley Award for Best Project by Friends of the Library is now accepting entries as well. Unlike the COVID-19 grant I outlined, Evie Nordley spotlights events and initiatives that have already taken place, namely over the preceding year, 2020. Any Friends-supported project is eligible, provided that the project implementation began after January 1, 2020, and either the Friends or their library was the primary beneficiary. Visit mnlibraryfriends.org for the application materials, and you can look over the judging criteria. I encourage you to apply no matter the size of your Friends group. One of our all-time favorite finalist projects came from the small town of Elmore on the Idaho border with a population of 480. And the last program I want to say a few words about is Stand Up for Standout Friends, which has been going since 2016. This award came about directly from members of Friends groups, with requests for ways to honor their most committed volunteers with something at the state level. Since its debut at the Minnesota Library Association 5 years ago, Stand Up for Standout Friends has successfully been used to spotlight more than 60 outstanding Friends members. Every dues-paying member of MALF is encouraged to name someone to the 2021 class of Standout Friends. Perks include a matted certificate from MALF, a commendation letter to the mayor and county commissioner in each of the recipients' hometown, inclusion in a special video tribute, a written featurette in an upcoming MALF e-newsletter, and a few other perks we'll announce over the summer. Some of your stories may also be shared nationally via our national counterpart, United for Libraries, which is part of the American Library Association. I mentioned our biweekly e-newsletter in passing. I encourage you to sign up. It's by Friends for Friends, and I think you'll enjoy the articles designed to keep you up to date with MALF and other Friends groups. You can sign up easily from our website homepage. I also invite you to follow us on Facebook and Twitter. In closing, a very heartfelt thanks to Susie, Brooke, Karen, and Susan for so generously sharing their time and stories with us today. It was wonderful. I also want to thank fellow director Melissa Bichon for her time and her work, including securing our panelists today. To our wonderful office manager, David Katz, who has been the editor, producer, kind of an all-around backstage director in our production today. And to the incomparable Ann Hutton for playing point on the questions. So thank you all for joining us. Take care, everybody.